Okay, first of all, the fairings with World Superbike you're allowed to modify. You have to keep the profile of the standard fairing, but you're allowed to obviously make a race fairing out of carbon, lightweight, much stronger. Our fairing has got some supports on the side as well to give it some strength. Obviously the bike's often travelling up to 300 kilometres an hour, so the last thing you want is a fairing sort of shaking in the breeze there. As you can see looking down there, we also have carbon reinforcement on the side of the engine cases. Just again, if you do go down, it hopefully stops a hole coming in the crankcase and keep the oil off the road. So this is part of the regulations, you have to have that. As you can see from the side, the battery's relocated from the road bike to move the weight more centrally. The transponder there is for the timing systems, the blue box there. The swinging arm is a kit swinging arm. It's specifically designed for racing. The shock position, however, remains very similar to on the road bike because obviously the frame mounting remains the same. So you've got some adjustability. You can run different link ratios here, and obviously you can adjust the shock, run different spring rates, that kind of thing. So there's a fair amount of freedom there in terms of what you can do to change the characteristics of the suspension. On the top of the swinging arm there you see those sensors. They're actually recording the tyre temperature, which is useful information with the setup of the bike. You can see how the tyre's performing actually out on the track. Moving up to the top again, bodywork at the rear is the same profile as the standard bike, but carbon, much lighter weight subframe, titanium system from Leah Vinci. Full race titanium system, just tuned obviously for power, no emission controls and no, well there is a noise level, but to be honest it's not an issue in terms of any compromise for power. We do quite a lot of work with Leah Vinci on not only the silencers, length, design, but a lot of work on the different primary and secondary lengths, obviously to tune, not just for top end power, but with these bikes, a lot more work goes into the mid-range and the way the power is delivered, because they produce a lot of horsepower. The challenge is getting it on the road rather than actually producing big numbers on the dyno. Okay, fuel tank, again similar shape to the standard one, but we increased the capacity. It's about 5 litres more than the standard tank. Most of that is under the seat, so it's not a huge part under there, but it's probably about 3 litres under the seat. Takes the weight to the centre of the bike again. Clutch on the bike is fundamentally a Kawasaki clutch, just with slightly different settings. Moving to the front, we can see the brake system, Brembo system. Fairly standard, I think, on a lot of the race bikes now. We try to run as small a disc as we can to get obviously the braking power we need, but also bigger discs will slow down the turning of the bike, so it's always a compromise there between the power you need and having too much weight. The only area that a lot of work goes into is pads and back plates on the pads and that sort of thing. That's where the heat becomes an issue. Okay, a lot more on here than perhaps it would have been a few years ago. As you can see, there's 6 buttons on there. The rider has got the normal controls to switch the engine off, etc, etc, but on the left hand side the rider can have a choice of engine maps, traction maps that he can switch if conditions change as the race goes on. Obviously the grip on the rear tyre may go down, so he may want to increase the amount of traction control, power reduction that he has. He can do that either by selecting a separate map, which would change a lot of factors, or he can he also has the option to kind of scroll up and down slightly. So in other words, he can sort of add a few percent or take off a few percent. It's endless. I mean, they're being modified all the time by the data technician, so it's not a case of going into a weekend and say, okay, we've got a choice of 3, because you can adjust hundreds of parameters on each map. So it's an endless combination of settings. Okay, we run, you can probably just see on the top there, we run a larger radiator. Obviously with increased power you've got increased heat, but it's also important to work on the aerodynamics. I mean, it's a big area of the bike, in terms of, you know, hitting the wind there. So the radio is bigger, but it allows more air through it. The rules say it has to, it's a silhouette formula, so as long as, you know, you can't change where the air intake is on the front, but you have some flexibility to change the size, the, you know, the areas that are covered, the angle of the screen, all those kind of things you can change. So, you know, there's a fair amount of flexibility there.